Thanks, Alan, so much for that intro. Hey, Shannon, good to see you.
Hi, nice to see you too, Michelle.
So I'm excited for this conversation because we've had the opportunity to work together for a few years now. But I will just to set the stage for our convo for everyone that is watching. As the media landscape continues to evolve, marketers have been forced to reset and explore new ways of working. And today we have you, a veteran of both the agency and client side, here to join us in a conversation around in-housing. And we'll talk about the challenges and benefits, and really importantly, explore how in-housing and agency models will evolve in the future. So to kick it off, I think it'd be helpful if you could just walk us through your professional journey and how in-housing specifically has become an important topic of interest for you.
Sure. You don't want the whole personal journey. You want to start with the Apple.
I want everything. We're going to have the personal stuff at the end.
We can go so far back. No. Well, yeah. So the professional journey, I got into the world of digital media in 1999 at a small but early digital media agency, which some of the folks listening today might remember, called Mass Transit Interactive. And was one of the early media planners and account managers there for a really cool search engine called Alta Vista, which was my first client in the space. A lot of fun had on that account for sure. Translate that into the dot-com bubble bursting, me starting my own digital media agency called Morpheus Media, which you'll remember, Michelle. I ran Morpheus for 14 years, sold it, which was an amazing opportunity, and then ultimately ended up moving over to WPP to join MEC as the president of digital. And then from there, moved over to Publicis for a few years to run the Verizon business and the GSK business. And now here at L'Oreal on the client side for the first time in my career. So seeing things from a little bit of a different perspective, which is a lot of fun.
No, that's great. And I know we've had the opportunity to talk about kind of the advantages of working closely with your agency partners, but also when is the right time to bring things in-house. But it's such an expansive topic. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what's captivated your attention most as a leader?
Yeah, so it's an interesting space. So when I started Morpheus in 2001, we really positioned, I want to say positioned. I always like to believe that we actually had a business plan when we started the business, but that's not really how it worked. We had clients and they needed digital media and we were really good at it. The advantage of being really good at it and being the people who were hands on keyboard in the tools and running the systems was that we instantly became an extension of the client's team. And so as we expanded talent and we also expanded clients, we always had this mantra of our job is to be an extension of the client's team. You shouldn't think about us being in the room or not being in the room because we're the agency. You should think about us being in the room because we're a part of what you do, and our mission is to make you better. Our mission is your mission: grow your sales, grow your household penetration, increase your ROAS, whatever your goals were our goals on your business. And our job is to find the best way to get there. And so it came very naturally to me to be an extension of the client's business. I think when I moved into big holding company life was when I first realized that there is occasionally this sense with clients that like the agency should maybe be kept at a bit of an arm's length. And of course, we all went through the questions about agency confidentiality and agency margins and that whole process that happened a few years back, which I think created some concern. And at least initially, I believe the early thoughts of, should we have talent in-house at the brand side? Should we have our own people? Does it help us with a margin perspective? Nothing's in a black box anywhere. We've got all of the information and all of the transparency. So there were transparency reasons that was done. There were control reasons that it was done. Honestly, in some cases, it was an idea for savings for many clients, right? We can not have to pay the margin that we pay the agency and we can have this talent in-house. And then I think there were advantages that came up over time. But it's interesting, over the course of my 20 years now, well over 20 years of experience being in this side of the business, digital is always that thing that people want to bring in house. You know, it's very rare that somebody brings in their television planning or their print buying. But digital is that thing that people seem to think, well, if I can do it cheaper, if I can do it more nimbly, if I can do it at the touch point of my business, maybe there's an advantage for me. And there are advantages and disadvantages to both.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd love to talk about that a little bit, because I know that when we've talked about this topic, some of the, what comes up a lot is how do you mold the right talent and recruit the right talent if you're going in-house, and where you can rely on the expertise of an agency. So maybe we can kind of double click on that a little bit in terms of kind of what are the greatest challenges when you're switching models.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So I've watched a bunch of clients do this over the years, right? And I've watched ones do it successfully, and I've watched ones do it and have challenges with it and have to reverse the thinking. And then I've seen mixed models ultimately succeed as well. And I think there's a few factors that come into play. Let's start with just the talent, right? We're talking about people and humans who are coming out of college quite often. The idea of digital media is sexy and interesting. They're going to go be a search planner. They're going to go do programmatic media. They're going to be a trader. That all gets very exciting, right? And in some cases, they have literally millions of dollars flowing through their fingertips as they plan some of these campaigns. And they're often fresh out of school, maybe in their early 20s, figuring out how all of this works. I think for a brand, and forgive the noise in the background, I live close to a street. So if you're hearing some really great hip hop music, I'm not in a club. Although it could be interesting.
You're good, can't hear anything.
All right, perfect. Uh, so I think there's something interesting about how do you educate this talent? Let's just start there, right? The very basics of how do you make sure that they are the best programmatic traders, the best search marketers, the best social media activation people. Somebody has to give them those basic skills. And while there are a few college programs out there that teach that, I actually taught one of them at Iona College. I was an adjunct in the School of Mass Communications for a couple of years, which was a lot of fun. And my mission was always to train people who I thought would be great entry-level employees at my agency, right? There's a little bit of that out there. There's not a proliferation of media training talent in how to be a programmatic trader in the ecosystem. So you first have to start with the talent that you're bringing on. What that results in quite often is that people hire at a higher level. So you hire people who have 2 or 3 years of agency experience. But let's be honest, the agency experience versus the brand side experience are very different. There's perks to the agency side, even though sometimes the salaries may be a bit lower, or the bonuses may not be as real. And so what are those perks? Those perks are that, partners like you come in and occasionally bring us donuts, or we have lunch together. There's the occasional coffee.
I miss those days.
I know, me too. We'll get back to them eventually, right? Those perks when you're young and you're fresh out of school, those are valuable and important. And I don't think they can be undervalued in the experience. The other perk that I think is really important is who's the leadership that this talent is looking up to, and what is their exposure to other brands, other clients, other experiences, to start to really develop a well-rounded perspective on things. And then of course, if there's sometimes little silly things like you want them to be in-house. Where is your corporate headquarters? Is your corporate headquarters in a location that a 20-something-year-old fresh out of college actually wants to live in? Or are they really looking to live in the city? And that has to be answered brand by brand and division by division and company by company, right? You have to think about that for your own skills. And I'm not going to diss any specific part of the world, because I'm sure there are places where, you will find some of that talent. It just may not be a hotbed of that talent. If I move on to how do you retain them, which I think is like an interesting challenge, it's who are they looking up to? Where are they getting their training? And where do they go next? Sure. And I think sometimes that's the piece we forget is, do they want to grow up to be a brand marketer? Do they want to grow up to be a general manager of a business? Or do they want to go be the head of programmatic media, or maybe go work at Google or at Facebook or at Snap? And maybe this path on the inside isn't necessarily the path that they would have on the outside. Right. So those are some of the challenges. I could go on for days. So
it's fascinating. I love it. Go back a little bit. I think in the beginning you talked about, where you've seen success is when clients can make agencies really an extension of their brands. And I know from our side, on the media side, we value our agency partnerships and certainly see that it works best when they are, hand in hand with their clients. Could you talk a little bit about kind of giving advice of how organizations can effectively do that?
Yeah, I think, look, not every brand can afford it, but I will always recommend that you want to have the people who work on your business to be as close to dedicated on your business as you possibly can, right? And I've seen many clients do that over the years. And I think there's a strategic advantage in that. If you know that they're working for you, then their priorities aren't split. But if they're still within the agency world, then they have access to other accounts, other things, not competitors, let's be clear, but other accounts where somebody might be trialing a new tool that's coming down the pipe, or another brand within the portfolio of the agency might have access to a new creative execution that is launching on Snap that maybe somebody else hasn't seen before or tried before. And so this is an opportunity for them to get insider knowledge of how that activation actually worked and bring it to bear on behalf of the business. But I think if you have a team, first of all, that is close to dedicated to you as possible, then they're not distracted by having to manage to multiple masters. And nobody on a client side ever wants to hear either, I'm sorry, that's not in scope, or I'm sorry, I have another client that's more important than you today. Not that they would ever say it that way, but that's how it feels, right? I can't get to that today because I have other priorities. No client wants to hear that. Right? I want to be the priority. I want to be special. I want to be the most important thing you have going on because I'm the most important thing I have going on. So
Right.
that's support. And so how do you get them to be dedicated? And I think how do you also find ways to make sure that they are that they have the right level of access, right? And that access can be something as simple as how do you get them in the building? If they get stuck in purgatory between glass doors every time they come to visit you, and there's no opportunity for them to get in and navigate the space, do you have the right NDAs in place? Do you have the right confidentialities in place so that you can give them access to more of your business's data and therefore have them help you drive the right strategies or make the right changes? How do you remember to make sure that they're invited to all of the right meetings? Because when they're there, the speed of communication actually helps you move things forward faster.
Yeah, and that's so important. And I think it'll be interesting as we see in time, as we shift back, post-COVID, of how we're incorporating everyone in meetings when it's going to be a hybrid of, both virtual and in person. So
I think that's going to be so fascinating. I think the neutrality that has come from being in boxes on a screen has had some really fantastic advantages for team members, junior team members, senior team members. You're no longer, the most important person in the room always sits in this seat and everybody fans out from around them, right? Which we've all seen happen at different clients over the years. I think the fascinating piece will be how do you maintain that neutrality within an organization and make sure that junior voices have that platform to still get heard and be seen, especially when half the people are in the office and maybe half the people aren't, or some people decide to work from home one day, some people don't, we're all on screens. So one of the ways I'm solving that, just as my little tip or trick for the day, I want everybody to bring their computer, even if we're going to be in the same room, everybody bring their computer so that we all still make boxes on the screen.
I think that's
great. We may still physically be in the room together. I also think there should be a no muting rule.
No muting or meeting?
No muting, no mute. Do not use the mute button. I think it's the thing that used to drive me crazy about conference calls was like the people in one room would mute and then they would have a sidebar conversation and then they would come back. If you were physically in the room, you can't do that, right? So why do we give ourselves permission to have these little sidebar conversations when if we were physically in the room, we just have to have the conversation, just have the conversation.
I love that. I want to adopt that. And we talk a lot about, to your point about grooming talent from multiple markets. It also gives an opportunity if majority of the people or team members are in New York, like how do you give the voice to the people in the other markets, like an equal playing field in that meeting? So I think that's great.
Yeah.
Shifting gears a little bit, I know when we're talking about the world of digital, innovation is moving so quickly, and the teams are really having to stay on top of discovering new tools from partners every day. I know, at Snap, we are knocking on your doors and talking every day, whether it's AR and e-com and content, and you have a host of other partners that are bringing you innovations. How do you ensure your teams are really up to date and like seizing those opportunities? And you referenced to at the agency side, like cross-pollinating, so that make sure that we're sharing learnings.
Yeah, it's probably one of the biggest challenges. I think reading is obviously always really, really important. And I say that realizing that I've got the blue screen up so you can't see what's behind me, but on the shelf behind me is a book called Overcoming Dyslexic. I'm dyslexic, my daughter's dyslexic. Reading takes me more time than it takes everybody else, right? So getting through the trades and getting through all of that information takes a lot, but it's also super fascinating. So I always find that the things that I read are super fascinating. So it makes it a bit easier to plow through them. But I think if you can encourage cross contamination of knowledge and really easy sharing. So I've been a really huge fan of Teams. we launched it at Publicis before I left and had it already up and running long before the pandemic, actually probably well over a year or more actually before the pandemic. We were using it at Publicis and still trying to like put it through its motions and figure out the right ways to use it, how to get people chatting and communicating, how to share files there, et cetera. I feel sorry for the folks at Microsoft who were on the Teams team who probably didn't expect that it was going to be this much of a powerhouse product as quickly as it got there, but I think they've done a really good job in trying to keep up and make the tool accessible. But how do you, this goes back to a bit of that neutrality, how do you make sure that information is shared and shared quickly? And I think I still struggle with speed of communication versus accuracy of communication. And of course, you never want to put out information that's inaccurate. But is it better sometimes to share, this is what we know so far, more details to come, versus this is the complete thing, and now it feels like I've gotten 10 different rumors before I got to the complete picture, right? So I think a bigger fan of making sure that information gets shared in progress, with caveats that there will be more information to come. There will be things that change, and that's okay, right? And I think everybody has something to share and everybody has something to bring. So how do you make sure that, again, the voices of the team get heard, whether they're on your agency side or whether they're on your brand side? And the beauty of having your talent on the agency side is that they're going to continue to bring that robust knowledge of what they're seeing and hearing throughout the agency. And then what you'll get on the brand side is that robust knowledge of what's happening in the business. And so we'll know things about in stocks or what's changing with a retail partner oftentimes before the agency will. But that cross-contamination of knowledge and knowing that everybody shows up to the party with their own piece of information to share means we all brought a dish. And it makes for a better party when we all bring a dish.
For sure. Love that. Is there, when you're looking at the agency models and whether it's a hybrid model or from your experience at the agency, a model that you feel like works best, especially as within digital, like the worlds are getting blurred a little bit. So the video team and the social teams, from where we're coming from, obviously then there's like the e-com teams. How do you make sure that those teams are all working in tandem?
Yeah, it's really interesting because you can have this deep vertical knowledge, and then how do you make sure that you maintain this cross-contamination, right? Contamination is probably a bad word for that.
Pollination. I like cross-pollination.
Cross-pollination. That's better. Now that we're in spring, it's pollination. Yeah, I think that's going to be very different company by company and brand by brand, right? And part of that depends on the ecosystem of your media mix, what you're putting into market, how complicated what you're putting into market is, and how many people you have activating it. If you have in-house talent or agency talent or a blend of both, running an actual tactic. I do think you always need to have somewhere, either within your agency or within your company, a level of center of excellence somewhere. So somebody or some group that continues to behave as the expert, deep expertise in a specific area. Can you start to have people who are cross-disciplinary, managing search and social, managing programmatic and paid social or retailer media? Certainly, those things are all possible. Again, it depends on the size and scale. The cautionary tale that I always put around those types of moments is if you are looking for somebody who has strong paid search capability and strong programmatic media capability and strong retailer capability, you are asking for a lot of strength in somebody with probably not a lot of years of experience. And so just be cautious about a jack of all trades and maybe not a master of most yet. It's not to say that these people don't exist. The challenge, and this is again one of the challenges having in-house talent versus agency talent, if you lose a talent on the brand side, you have a gap in your ecosystem until you refill that talent, and now it's your responsibility on the brand side to fill that talent. If you lose a talent on the agency side, that stinks, but the agencies, because they are so vast and because they have often the flexibility of an account coming in, an account leaving, an account scaling up and an account scaling down, they have access to hundreds of times more the amount of talent for that specific discipline that you're looking for, and can often rotate somebody in much faster than it would take for you to hire somebody from the outside. So how you manage that balance, I think, is always something to keep in the back of your mind.
Sure. No, I think it's great. Another, interesting topic, I think, is also how there's new ways of going to market and engaging consumers with immersive creative, and coveted innovation is so important. And we've even seen ways that that can inform product development in some ways. Can you talk a little bit about how an organization can seize on those learnings? And again, a little bit of the pros and cons of it's a hybrid model with the agency or you're doing things in-house.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, my screen just decided it wanted me to update Flash. Why? Okay, great. So I think using the creativity or using the insights that come out of the media is always super important for how you continue to drive innovation. And it can be really fascinating. I'll use a story from many years ago at Morpheus, where one of our clients, years ago, so I don't think anybody will mind the story. One of our clients was A&E Television Networks, and they were in the process of launching a new show, and they had a few different titles at hand, and they were trying to figure out what the best title was. And one of the very smart questions they asked of the agency, which was us, was SEO value. If we're going to launch this new show, what can we own? What can be a space where we're not competing with other companies or competing with other brands or competing with other titles? Is there a title that we can own? And ultimately, through search engine optimization and research, we were able to help them land on a title for the show, which was really exciting. And that show ultimately ended up being Duck Dynasty, which is pretty cool. So not a small show in the world of A&E Television Network. So that was very cool. I think those types of moments are, you can't expect that the insights you get from media are always going to launch a new product. They're not always going to launch a ship, right? However, by keeping tabs on them and keeping listening, and again, it doesn't matter if it's the in-house team or the agency team, it's about the connectivity. It's about making sure that those teams are in constant communication and partners, is when that proliferation of information becomes really valuable and helps lead to those new ideas. Yeah. I'll pause there.
No, I think it's great. I mean, as you're speaking, you're giving the example of TV. I mean, I was thinking, bringing it back to Snap a little bit, but in terms of how we feel like there's this massive untapped opportunity for brands when it comes to AR and how you can learn about your products and how consumers are engaging. So I know that's just kind of, as we're looking to the future, other opportunities, that we can share data back and be able to kind of inform product roadmaps.
Well, and I think all of that comes down to what are consumers using and what are consumers doing, right? So AR is really always one of those fantastic, fascinating moments where you truly get to see a customer play, right? A consumer gets to play with your product, with the colors. I remember the early Warby Parker stuff that was done where you could change out the glasses, and that was really cool. It has to lead to somebody considering, okay, maybe we need to have a little bit more stock of this particular frame because this is the one people are landing on, or enough self-knowledge to know that people are always landing on this one because it's funny. It's not because they're going to buy it. It's the one that they're screen capturing and sharing, right? So just so you know which one of those you're working with.
No, I think it's great. I'm being mindful of time and quickly looking at the chat because as we've been speaking, a couple of questions are coming in. Let me get that. Okay, this past year, we've seen incredible innovation across all industries. Tell us about new innovative ways your brand is connecting to consumers today.
Sure. I think some of the great stuff that's happening at L'Oreal, and it's one of the reasons I just joined L'Oreal last August. I think it's one of the things that got me really excited about being a part of.
Yeah.
I know. Crazy how time flies. It's been really exciting. There's, if you spend any time on our sites or with our partners, you'll see we do a lot of virtual try-on, and we bring a lot of what we call services to our consumers. And I just think it's a really wonderful way as a brand and as a business that we help consumers have a little bit of fun with the products, but also ensure that they're making smart decisions that work for them. And I think in the age of COVID, we had this really amazing moment, as many brands did, where we had to rethink how consumers were going to test and try before they buy. And no consumer, with all of the wonderful return policies that retailers have out there, no consumer wants to make a bad decision, right? Like, you want that foundation to work when you get it in your door. You want that lipstick to look just as good on you as you expected it to from the moment you bought it. And so how do we bring those experiences to life in a way that the consumer has that level of confidence before they purchase? And I think there's just been some really beautiful, with Motivace and some of our partners, some really beautiful executions of that.
Oh, that's great. This is an interesting one. We talked a lot about kind of the media buying in terms of agencies and in-house. As leaders, you're always developing your abilities. What skills would you like your marketing team to develop this year? And I think that's interesting as marketing teams, especially in the world of digital, some are leaning in a lot more than they have in the past.
Yeah, I think the things that I would love the marketing team, somebody said to me earlier today, I was on a different conference call, to really be a student of the data. And I caution that only slightly in that we can get stuck in analysis paralysis. So I certainly don't want anybody going down the rabbit hole if I just have to dig into every single number. But I find that, and this going back to my agency days for a minute, and then my brand side for a second here as well, the best customers to the agency, and to me, the best marketers to work with, even within my own organization, are the ones who have enough knowledge about the data to have confidence in making decisions with the data that's presented to them, and understand how the numbers work or how that methodology works, not to the level that you're going to be able to write formulas with coefficients in them. Like, I'm not expecting, I've got literally calculus notes from my son in my notebook sitting in front of me. I'm not expecting our marketers to go into calculus. But I do think the more you can understand how the data comes together and the functionality of how it all works, the faster you'll be able to have the confidence in making decisions behind it and be able to do something at speed.
I think that's great. We touched on this a little bit, but I want to ask it because you're someone that I've always admired as a leader, in all of your roles. And someone is asking, has your leadership style changed over the past few months? And, related, have you been able to develop more personal relationships with your colleagues or partners?
Leadership styles have definitely had to adapt. I don't know that it's necessarily changed. It'd be interesting for me to go back and talk to some of the folks that I've worked with, to see if they've seen any massive changes. But the adaptation is tough. I'm a very in-person, I love being with the team. I never really had much of an office. My office was always a conference room, and I would sit out with the team and kind of float from couch to conference room to meeting room, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I liked kind of being out in the hubbub of things. And of course, we just don't have that right now. So I've tried to recreate that. My team of the GSK business, I think, rolled their eyes at me initially and then kind of got on board. And then I brought it with me to L'Oreal. We have a 5 o'clock party line. I do intentionally call it the party line. I bring a cocktail, bring your dog, bring your kid, whatever it is. But there was, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, there was so much happening so quickly that we all needed to respond to. And we needed to get on the same page quickly, that there just wasn't time to have a weekly status meeting for an hour and a half. It was much faster to have 30 minutes every day, 5 o'clock. If we use it, we use it. If we don't, we don't. If we just catch up and talk to each other as humans for half an hour, that's okay too. And so I think that was really beneficial for a lot of us to just continue to have that human connection, especially in the very beginning when we had team members who were home alone, not knowing when they were going to get out of their complete isolation. So it was a chance to just connect with other people. And so, yeah, I do think my leadership style has had to adapt to this virtual world. I said before, like, I'm a huge fan of Teams. So I've been quite the advocate of, share a funny story, make sure you use the little hands clapping, send praise. I don't know if everybody knows that there's a praise button in Teams if your company has it turned on. And I think it's just a great way to just shout out to so-and-so for doing a great job presenting that deck, or being in a meeting yesterday that they got called into last minute, or whatever it is. I think we've had to heighten our expressions of praise for people, because it's really hard to feel it from a distance.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think from as the media partner who oftentimes we're presenting, and sometimes there could be 100 people on the call with their cameras off. I think similarly, I feel like you get the excitement from how everyone is reacting in the chat, and that's okay. We've all learned to use that as a moment of expression.
I think the cameras off versus cameras on thing is also really interesting. And I think when you have large meetings, it's really hard. It can be a drain on the system, although things have gotten better. I'm a big fan of cameras on Monday through Thursday. I've really tried to institute cameras off on Friday, like just, summer Fridays when we get there and all of that. But like, we do visually need a break. I think it's why print magazines are starting to see a really nice resurgence in the number of people who are subscribing to the actual print magazine, because we're a little tired of screens.
No, I as a former print person, that makes me happy to hear you say that. But yes. In the two, I have, the fun lightning round I was going to do with you, but do you have anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to talk about?
Oh, I think we've covered so much. So
Good.
hopefully
So
it was
now we
helpful.
get the fun personal
Okay.
stuff.
All right.
So thinking back to our in-person days, I'm always envious of your amazing shoe collection. I'm even wearing heels right now in your honor, first time in a year. What's your favorite purchase?
I have, you can't see them because they're actually behind me, but I have a pair of Prada Hot Rod heels from a collection that they did in 2012. So if you Google Prada Hot Rod 2012, you'll find them. I'm a bit of a car buff, grew up wrenching on cars with my dad. And they have chrome. The ones I have 1965 Cadillac taillights and flames. They're super cool.
Oh my God, I want to see those. That's so fun. Favorite go-to home cooked meal this year?
So I think you know this, Michelle, but my husband actually went to culinary school a couple of years ago. So I am spoiled to live with a trained chef. He's actually a practicing attorney, but he's also a trained chef. And his duck breast is to die for.
Oh, that's way better meals than I've been cooking for my family. And my very last question, your must-have beauty product that you cannot leave home without.
Okay. So this is long before I ever started working at L'Oreal. It's from La Roche-Posay. I'll put it in the chat if everybody needs it. It's called Anthelios. It's a daily wear sunscreen. Please do not leave your house without sunscreen. I don't care what your complexion is. Please, please, please. I will definitely share a link to it because it's a phenomenal product.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Shenan. We appreciate the time today.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Alan, for the opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you guys so much for this. It was great. On behalf of Macintosh users worldwide, though, I do need to point out that Teams is not very Mac friendly, nor are any Microsoft products, even in the year 2021. And so, while it probably is a good product, it a lot of times we sit there on calls going, no, it still doesn't work yet. Still doesn't work yet. So.
I'm going to argue that if you have the desktop installation, it is much better on a Mac because my Mac is my daily computer. So
yeah, it's just but the problem is a lot of times you get people and they don't have the they don't have it downloaded and blah blah. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I was like, wow, shoes, you have Crocs, but they're great for walking the dog. But anyway. Thank you guys so much. It was really insightful. You could really make a show out of this conversation.